This is the Productize Podcast. My name is Brian Castle. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Got an interesting one for you today, a little bit different. I'm talking to Will King. He is actually the producer that I've been working with on this Productize Podcast. He has been doing, writing a lot of the show notes and helping with coordinating guests. And so we talked a little bit at the beginning of the interview about some behind the scenes stuff on how we're putting this show together and how Will actually found this role of working with me and what I was looking for in Will's role to be doing this stuff for me. So I think it's kind of like a mutually beneficial working relationship thing we've got going here. So that's pretty cool. And then, of course, we're going to spend the bulk of this episode just batting around ideas with Will on his productized service idea in the making. I think this is a really good one. So he's at the very, very early stages of launching his first productized service idea. And we talk about what the idea is. We talk about who it's for and his process for validating the idea with customers and how he plans to go about building it. And just answering a lot of different questions and thinking through a few different strategies. And I really relate to a lot of it because it kind of matches a lot of things that line up with my personal experience, especially back when I was working on Restaurant Engine. So I think you'll enjoy this one. Before we dive into that, I'm going to run the audio from a recent YouTube video I did where I answered a listener's question. As always, if you have any questions that you want to hear me bat around over on the YouTube channel here on the podcast, you can reply to me over email or send me a tweet or I don't know. Those are probably the two best channels there. So here's the latest audio from one of my YouTube videos where I'm answering a listener's question.
Can you hold down a day job while building a business? That's a good question. It's a tough one. Let's get into it today. Hi there, Brian Castle here, answering another reader's question on YouTube. Of course, if there's anything that you'd like to see me talk about here, hit me up on the comments, hit me up on Twitter, reply to any of my emails, and I will answer them here on YouTube. So this is a good one. Amit asked, have I ever personally had the issue of trying to hold down a day job at the same time as trying to build a business? I have done that a little bit, but more so moving from being a freelancer and balancing that and building a business. But I've worked with many other people who have made more of that transition from a full-time salary position to building a business. Back when I first started that, I was building my freelance business while holding down a day job. So I have a little bit of experience with that. First, if the question is this even possible to build a business while holding down a day job? Yes, of course it's possible. I've seen it done time and time again. So I have two bits of advice here. And then I just wanted to talk about three things that could make it a little bit easier if these are possible. So first, the two bits of advice. First, I strongly advise against just quitting your job before you have at least put in significant effort at trying to build your business while holding the day job. Again, this is totally possible. So you should try to do that together before, throwing away a full-time salary and the security that comes with that. I've seen so many entrepreneurs or, wantrepreneurs, if you will, just think that from the time that they leave their job, their new business is just going to work right out of the gate and start to grow. As we all know, it doesn't work that way. You're going to need to go through a lot of trial and error and a lot of legwork and research and talking to customers and learning and constant learning, really. So the more of that work that you can do, the more of that early legwork that you can do while you still have the full-time salary, the better off you're going to be, and the more successful you'll be at fully making that transition later on. The other thing to keep in mind is that you can use your salary position as a key strategy in building your new business. I mean, the longer that you can keep your full-time salary to pay your bills, that's a longer period of time that you don't need to take a salary from your business. Meaning your business does not have to be profitable enough to pay your bills for your house, for your family, for whatever. The more that you can keep that financial security from the job, because I've even seen founders who have hired managers and other people in their business to work in the day-to-day long before the founder themselves even quit their full-time day job. I mean, it sounds pretty amazing, but that's a really good strategy to grow the business pretty significantly because you can take 100% of the revenue from your business and reinvest it into hiring people or investing in marketing ideas and things like that because you have the financial security from your job. Of course, that won't sustain forever because you're going to run into time constraints, but it's possible and I've seen it done. Now, there are three things that make it a little bit easier if you're going to try to, do this balance of starting a business while holding down a day job. Some of these may not be possible for you or may not be options on the table right now, but these are the factors that I've seen make this whole transition a little bit more possible. The first thing is that hopefully you work for a company that allows its employees to have their own side hustles, their own little side businesses. I strongly believe that it's wrong for any company or any boss or employer to prevent or not allow their employees to have their own things going on their own time. I just think that that's wrong. But unfortunately, I know that there are companies out there who have policies against that sort of thing. And again, I don't agree with it, but it's there. And if you work for a company like that, you're just going to have a harder time. And to me, I would actually use that as criteria to look for a different job, frankly. Another thing that makes it easier is if your full-time salary is a remote position, meaning you can work from home. Of course, that does not mean that you're not actually going to be working for your job because you're not in an office. You're still going to be putting in hours, when you work remotely. But it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of schedule, in terms of privacy. So if you ever need to do things like, taking a sales call for your new business or, doing a little bit of time-sensitive work in the middle of a business day, you have a little bit more flexibility to do that. Of course, it's not impossible, even if you work in an office, to go, take a call on your lunch hour or that sort of thing. But, working remotely is a little bit more flexible. So if I were looking for a job, a salary job that would enable me to try to self-fund my way into a business, I would certainly be looking for a remote working position for sure. The last tip here, and you do have control over this, is that you have to be willing to hustle. I'm not one of these people who preaches that when you build a business and as an entrepreneur that you have to put in 80-hour weeks. I think that's unhealthy and it's wrong. But if your goal is to get out of a job by building a business to a point where you can grow an income that can replace your salary, then there's just no way around it. You're going to need to have to hustle. That usually means waking up extra early, like hours earlier than your day job starts, so that you can put in some good morning hours work into your business. Maybe working nights and weekends as well. It could even mean taking vacation days, like using up your vacation days to work on your business. These are some sacrifices to make. You shouldn't expect to make them long term, but for the year or 2 years or so to really get your business off the ground, you'll probably need to make some sacrifices like that and really hustle at it. It's sort of a question of like, how bad do you want it? Because if being self-employed and owning your business and putting the work that requires to run a business long term, if that's really, really important to you, then doing things like hustling, waking up early, taking vacation days to work on the business, that stuff should just come naturally to you. You should want to do that if you really want that. That's sort of just the reality. So those are my thoughts on balancing the day job with building up a business for the first time. I hope you found that helpful. And if you have any feedback or other experiences, I would love to hear them. Hit me up in the comments here. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions for me, shoot them over to me and I will answer them here. Thanks for watching. See you.
All right, so let's head into my conversation with Will King. Now, I just want to apologize about the audio quality. Unfortunately, in the first half of this conversation, both Will and I's audio, we didn't have the right audio settings enabled. So it's not quite as clear and crisp as I would like it to be. But about halfway in, we got the audio switched up so that both of us should be on clearer channels for the second half of the interview. So I apologize about that. I don't think that it's a complete showstopper. Otherwise, I would have not published this one because it was really, really good content. I was really happy with this episode. I think you're really going to enjoy my conversation with Will. Here it is. Enjoy. All right, I'm here with Will King. Will, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for joining me. This is kind of a special, interesting episode here. We'll take you a little bit behind the scenes first because, Will, you've been working with me for this latest run of episodes on the Productize podcast. So for those who don't know, Will has been taking care of all of, writing all the show notes for every episode. And he helps with some of like the behind the scenes production elements of like coordinating guests and like sending guests, the link when the episode has launched. He's helping to prepare the the headliner video like clips or audio clips that I tweet out for every new episode. and Will is also helping me with researching, upcoming guests and helping to keep the pipeline full of guests so that this podcast keeps coming out throughout the year. So that's sort of some behind the scenes. Will, how is it going for you in this little role that we've got going here?
I gotta say, I'm enjoying it. We were talking a little bit before. I am trying to do my own thing, which is, I think, why I'm here today to talk a little bit about that and getting some of the behind the scenes from somebody who's been around this industry for a while and being able to see how you do it, even if it's, I'm a web developer, designer. So this isn't necessarily, you think like, why are you writing show notes? I just saw it as an opportunity to increase my, I guess you'd call it surface area of luck, and build relationships with people who I think could mentor me, could give me feedback and advice, but in a way that I can still provide value for them. So it's been a lot of fun. I have been learning a lot, being able to tear down every episode and try to create those show notes and think critically about the interviews that you're having. And it's been a blast, and I can't wait to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm just really happy that you actually reached out because, a few months back when I was kind of game planning out like how to bring back the Productize podcast, that was the one thing one was writing the show notes, but really the thing that I was a little bit stuck on was how am I going to keep having a solid pipeline of guests? Because that takes a lot of work to do the research and just find interesting people. Like after I burn through my friends who I want to interview, there's, we still need to fill out like the rest of the year. So, and we don't just interview anybody. We like I only want to interview people who are interesting and who I think would actually add value for the audience here. And so I think what I did, I forgot exactly where I did it. I might have mentioned it on my other podcast, Bootstrapped Web, and I think I tweeted about it.
Yep, it was on Bootstrap Web that I saw it.
Yeah, so like because it's not the kind of thing like I suppose you could just like hire any person off of Upwork to help with some of this podcast production stuff. But I was really looking for someone who just happened to already be like tuning into this sort of stuff, maybe already tuning into my podcast. That's why I mentioned it over on Bootstrapped Web. And like you said, like maybe this could be a mutually beneficial, relationship. Like, sure, you're taking care of these tasks for Productize Podcast, but we're going to start talking about your business here in a minute. You're launching this Productize service, and it's like you're tuning into this sort of business advice anyway, and so that makes you have a good ear for who else would be interesting to hear on this podcast. So I think it sort of fits well.
Yeah, the way I saw it was, this was an opportunity, and I think this will probably get mentioned further on, but I noticed that I was doing a lot of listening and a lot of thinking and a lot of planning and not a lot of shipping. And I thought to myself, here's this offer from Brian, maybe not an offer, maybe a plea for help from just somebody who could relate to what you're trying to do. And I just thought to myself, all right, put yourself in a situation where you have to ship something for someone who can inspire you to, get where you are hoping to be. Like I've followed along with Bootstrap Web for a while, seen the work that you've done, and there's so much that I want to be able to do, and I just procrastinate on actually shipping something. And this felt like finding somebody who I could observe, but also like provide value to in a way that it'd be worth your time as well, because you're a busy person. I don't want to just come up to you and be like, hey, help me with this, without being able to provide value. And like you said, it just seemed like a mutually beneficial situation that I thought would be a lot of fun, and it has proven to be true. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's really I really applaud you for doing that, because I think this is a perfect example for anyone else who's in your shoes, because I know there are so many people, whether they're in full-time jobs or they're freelancers and they're trying to level up, but they're, like that's the thing, like a lot of people email me or other people like, can you just hop on a call? Can I pick your brain for an hour? Like, no, I can't do that. Like, even if I have kids and everything too. It's like, I've got to make every hour count here. But that goes for every person, no matter what you're doing.
I've been thinking about like, it got me thinking too, like, who am I to ask for that hour? Because like, I don't even know if I'd have that hour, and I've got a whole lot less going on professionally, not to mention just like family and personal life as well. So
yeah,
I think it's a lot of advice is out there. And it's hard to find these opportunities, but you just got to jump on them when you have them to provide that value to someone that you want to get that feedback, that mentorship maybe is the word there.
Yeah, very cool. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about what you're working on? I mean, before we actually dive into your new productized service concept here, so you host another podcast yourself. Like, can you give us kind of a rundown of you and your background and what you're doing every day?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we'll try to make this quick. Went to college for industrial design, which is like physical products. Got interested into web design. Decided I don't just want to design them. I want to figure out how they're built. And then took courses from a program called Skill Crush to learn how to develop. And then got my first job in web and remote there. And it's been 6 years.
Wait. So you took courses from Skill Crush to learn it, and then you ended up working for Skill Crush.
Yes, I did. Because I had that like design background, they had a like teacher's aide, I guess is what they call it, teaching assistant position for their design courses that I went out for. And they were like, oh, you're the guy who has like the really good designs for like, because it's like a very intro stuff for like development. And everything I did, it's like, okay, I want to make sure it also looks really good. And they were like, they knew me because of how my projects that I completed looked. And so they were like, okay, you absolutely got the job. Like, we want you. And in fact, like, can you just be our web design instructor? And so I did that. It was like part-time work, did that for a while. And then a position opened up on the development team as a front-end developer, did that for a while. And now I'm the team lead over there for like development at Skill Crush.
Awesome. And how are you? Because like we're going to talk about this thing that you're shipping and doing all these other endeavors like outside of that job. Like, so I'm curious. Like whenever I'm talking to other people, like I always want to get an idea of where do you want this to go? Where do you want this to lead for you? Like, are you trying to take steps and put things in place to someday soon, like leave full-time employment, or what's your goal there? Or are you just interested in keeping side hustles going, but you still like your job?
I would love to leave and do my own projects full-time. That is definitely the long-term goal. I say long-term because I don't think it's short-term. Like I love the work that I do for Skill Crush. The work they have an awesome mission. Their main mission is to help women find new jobs in tech with courses that can help them change their careers and change their lives. So it's a great mission. I love being a part of it. I love the challenging work that's there, but at the same time, like it has shown me so many sides of like entrepreneurship and getting to like build a product. And I want that for myself. Like I've always been a tinkerer. Like I found industrial design, which was basically just like big kid Legos. Like you design how products work. And it was just like, this seems so awesome. And then I found the web, and it's just like, for me, the pool is solving problems and helping people. And whether that's in like a full-time job or in my own product, I just see that as like an escalation of what I love to do, which is, well, like I just mentioned, like solve problems to help people. And being able to go full time on it means that like I get to be the one running the ship, I guess, not from a sense that like I don't think things have gone well like with what I've done before, but like the decision making and like that part of it is something I want to experience. And like, I don't know, that's the kind of stuff excites me.
Totally. I mean, I completely relate to a lot of it. I come from a very similar background: designer, front end developer, finally learned some back end development. And then the thing is, once you learn how to build a website or be able to design anything on the internet is like, mm-hmm. That is just a drug right there, no matter what you're doing.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Because it's like, it's not just the act of building it. It's just like, it completely opens up so many options for you. Because you look at any business that gets launched, and what is seemingly like an impossible wall for so many people, it's like, well, I know exactly how they built that. They made a website and they mm-hmm. put this on it, and they made it do that. Like, and it seems so easy. Obviously, it's a lot harder to build a business, but at least the technical building blocks, you have a much better understanding once you've already learned how to design websites. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I want to hit on something you just mentioned that kind of brings me to where I'm at now, and like why I reached out to you and why I realized what I realized, which was once you learn how to design a website and build a website, doesn't mean you know how to build a business. I can build anything, any tool that I could want, but it doesn't mean that I'm building a tool that has a business model around it, that has a market that is willing to pay for it, to buy it. I can build all day, but not actually provide value. And that is the part that has taken me the longest to start to understand and realize that, hey, maybe I'll learn it. Like with development design, it's like there's a finite set of like rules around it, but business is so freeform. There's no set practices. Like there
it's like
can be
it's
rules
trial and
within
error.
an industry, exactly, but like a lot of it is just like learning from people's experiences, trying things yourself, shipping, because like with business, there's nothing like shipping and learning data based on like what you're putting out there.
You said it.
I need to learn how to be better with that and maybe learn from lessons from those who've come before. So here I am.
Well, let's. That you said it perfectly there. But let's get right into it. So, like, tell us about this thing. Like, how do you explain it? What's the name of the idea?
Yeah.
Give us your pitch.
the name of things is very hard to nail down, but I've called it Fabled Labs for now because I didn't want to spend so much time on a name. So it's kind of this concept of like, okay, this may be an umbrella that I will do market research and validation to find the products that can maybe live under that. But I'm calling it Fabled Labs. The first thing that I'm trying to tackle with this is creating tools and resources that help authors create a better business. Indie authors are, to me, very similar to like indie hackers, to bootstrap entrepreneurs. You know, like they are creating their own product, which is their books, and they are doing all sorts of marketing and sales and promotions in a bunch of different ways to sell that product to consumers. And I just saw a large area of this that I thought I can help them do certain things better that will make their lives easier and also help them like be able to spend time on what matters to them, which is writing.
So let me stop you real quick. So like the first thing, like first and foremost, before we get into really more of the details of this product that you have in mind. So when you say authors and you said indie authors,
Yes.
can you paint the picture a little bit more? So is it like fiction authors and is there a large community of this or is it like
Oh my goodness. So I'm about to out myself as like a giant nerd. So there is I would say a genre, but one could call it a subgenre too, of authors who write what is called literature RPG, which is basically just like in
think of like RPG video games.
Exactly, a classic RPG video game, but in written format. And what got me on this is like I loved playing video, like Final Fantasy. I loved those games growing up, but I've now gotten to a point in my life where like I can't sit for hours in front of a TV while my wife and child are doing, whatever, and play through the storyline of one of these. So what these authors have done, I think a lot of people felt that way. What these authors have done have created a genre where like they kind of capture the essence of that, but they tell the story themselves. And I just find it super interesting. And I think it's because like my favorite type of story, and honestly, like whether it's in the startup world, bootstrap world, lit RPG, is progression. And it kind of tells this story of people who go from nothing, and usually in their stories they go on to like win the game, win whatever it is, to become the greatest. Like it's this progression, this feeling that you see somebody learning from the start to become who they need to be, and that's kind of what pulls me in.
That's awesome that you mentioned that. I'm really glad that you did because like fiction authors, indie authors, but then within that there's this sub niche, a niche within a niche that you personally are into, and so like I would assume that there are lots of these types of books out there, and there must be communities where people are talking about them, and where you can find more of those writers. Like,
yeah. So people get really into these type of books. Like they talking about the system, the game system that the writers have created, how the stats work, that kind of stuff. So there's a huge community both on the author side and the reader side, and a lot of like proven engagement. We talked a couple months ago about like how I had kind of the same idea that I'll be talking about for mortgage brokers, but I listened. Microconf released their video vault, and there was a talk by Patio 11 where he talked about how he had the appointment software and there's like dentist office or whatever. And he mentioned, he woke up every day. And the reason why he got out of that software business and got rid of it was he woke up not excited to build things for them. And I realized that's what was happening kind of with that mortgage broker business. And so I liked the idea I had, but wanted to find someone that I could wake up every day wanting to help.
That's a really, really good point. I mean, I definitely relate to, and what you're talking about there is Patrick McKenzie, who is pretty well known in like the bootstrapper and software circles. And we'll link up that talk.
I'll make sure it's in the show notes.
we'll link it up actually. So, I mean, I certainly went through a lot of that when I was running and building my restaurant engine business, which I ended up selling in 2015. For a number of reasons, but honestly, that was one of them. It was like, that was why, because when I started that business, I thought that I could build something up to a point and have it run on its own and then just keep owning it, but not touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, I got it to that point, but there was still a much larger phase of growth that I felt like I was incapable of tapping into for that reason, because I was not willing to go fly on a plane to go to Chicago to hang out with restaurant owners at that industry conference I just don't want to do that. Like, I'm not interested. And other things like that, I'm just not personally connected to it. And I don't think that that's like a requirement for someone's business, certainly not their first
for most businesses, but some it does. Your target market hung out at conferences, and that would be the way to scale your business exponentially.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the fact that you are into this niche community of indie authors and this subgenre, you have insider information. You have insider knowledge that most WordPress web designers who are thinking about, kicking around an idea to build a website platform for some niche, they're not even going to know that this subgenre even exists, let alone knowing which communities to go into, let alone to knowing what is truly important to include on these websites for these authors. Like, you have all this insider information because you're in it,
Mm-hmm. So maybe I realize that I haven't actually even said what the product itself is.
So let's get into that. Like what would you say? I mean, we're talking about shipping your very first thing. So how do you describe like what the first thing that you would like to publicly ship would be?
Yes. So I've thought about this a lot because there's obviously a bunch of different things you can tackle, but I knew that I wanted to start with something that I knew I could win with using my current expertise. Something I felt comfortable shipping, something I could ship quickly, and something that I was able to validate was like a real need. So what that ended up being was a productized website package, maybe with a slight twist. It's kind of like it would be a done-for-you website template built on top of WordPress that, although by itself is helpful if you just give somebody and say like, hey, here's a theme. There's a ton of people who build themes. There's a ton of people who build customizable templates for WordPress. But what I wanted to build, what that to me that does is it puts that all in the responsibility of the authors for their time to set it up, to get the right assets, to make it look right, to choose the copy that goes on the page. So I didn't want to put that burden of responsibility on the authors, but instead be able to like be more of a partner with them and create like a package around best practices. What are readers actually looking for? What are, from my history in web design and development and understanding how conversion rates with different UI works, like what are the best UI options and choices for the type of conversions that they're trying to get. A lot of them do, newsletters. A lot of them have like stores or shops, like what does that look like? And being more of a professional partner with them. So that's kind of the high level idea of it. There's a lot of different details I could provide, but
I mean, we'll get into some of it, but like I obviously really like that model. I mean, it's very similar to what I did with Restaurant Engine, but for a much different niche. Mm-hmm. But you described it literally the same way that I was describing it back then, which was, okay, we know that there are themes for WordPress. We know that there are different plugins that you could, duct tape together to do what you need to do to run your website, or in your case, to run or promote an indie book. But so it's not like we need to come up with like a totally new solution for those things.
Exactly.
It's putting those pieces together in the most optimal way, in the easiest way. And a lot of these pieces, those authors have no idea about. Like, they don't know that they even exist. Like, because they're not web designers, they're writers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about like what would make a website for an indie author. Like, what would be the must-haves for someone to be successful as an indie author to have their website?
So the answer is I didn't know, and I still don't know 100%. So I'm definitely in the early stages of figuring all this out. But one thing that drew me to this solution as well as like this market was the community that they have. There are communities of readers that love discussing and debating about books. There are community of writers because they're indie writers, and just like the Indie Hackers website, there are these Facebook groups full of these, whether they're indie and specifically like lit RPGs, where I'm starting with the goal of expanding more vertically into the entire market down the road. But they have like a very tight knit community that they care about the work that they do. And so what I've been able to do is like start asking these questions, like asking the authors, hey, how do you have a website? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What's frustrating? When do you like, what do people engage with most? And then being able to flip it into the reader communities and be like, hey readers, like, what's your favorite thing about author websites? What is your, like, what frustrates you most when you visit an author website? Like, what are you looking for information wise? And just like any consumer, when you ask them what they like or don't like, they're not afraid to tell you. So
Yeah.
been able to get a lot of data surrounding this. So I'm starting to put a picture together of what all this is. But I think, to me, like, that will always be growing. And I think there's never a one-time answer to like, what does your website need? And that will be it forever, which is why I think this is such a needed thing for a community, a market like this, because like authors, to have a really good website that is just a part of your marketing funnel, you don't want to be dedicating all your time to researching what are readers looking for, what is converting, what is engaging readers right now.
Yeah.
Because all you want to be doing is writing.
Okay, so I want to step back to one thing that you mentioned, because I'm hearing something that I definitely made this mistake a couple of times. You talked about how like starting with this RPG, this lit RPG subgenre, and then expanding into the larger market of indie authors over time. I had that same idea with Restaurant Engine, and then event, like, the thought was, let me build it with Restaurant Engine, and then I'm going to copy and duplicate this into other industries. And I did once. I then created Hotel Propeller, which, if you look at it, it's a clone of Restaurant Engine, and I owned both for a while, and then I sold the business like with those two packaged together. But I never, like, Hotel Propeller never came close to the growth that Restaurant Engine did. But in a lot of ways, Hotel Propeller should have grown even more this was when I was owning it. I don't know what they do now, but like I thought that I would go into 10 other niche industries, and I just never did. And part of it is just being spread too thin and things changing. But the other thing, you got to keep in mind, first, number one is your goal is to ship something. So only focus on the thing that you're going to ship for the first 10 or 20 customers that you're going to ship it to. Like, you have no idea where you're going to be at a year or 3 years from now. Like, exactly. you can't predict. I thought I could predict that for myself. I was always completely wrong about that. Like I'm in a different mental state.
That's a good lesson. Yeah.
Like, I'm in a different mental state, and my business is in a different place. I've made all sorts of new connections that I never thought I would make. Like, it's just hard to predict. But then the other thing to keep in mind is that there can be, since you're in this really niche within a niche here, you could have normally I actually like markets where there is at least a few competitors, because it sort of proves that there's a good market there. I think there's some potential here I don't know this genre very well, but like you could be one of the only players who's offering this optimal website solution. And what that means is it comes with a little bit of risk, because maybe there are no other competitors, because it turns out that these types of authors don't pay for stuff like that. You could reach that conclusion. Or it just could be that like, hey, there was an opportunity here that no other web design product found yet, and you could be the go-to player. And if it's a large enough market, I mean, look, I have friends who I'm going to describe two friends of mine. One guy runs boardgametables.com.
Oh, yes, heard about that.
So he is a board game fanatic. Like he's like deep into this community of like hardcore board gamers. We're not talking about Monopoly. We're talking about like I don't know. I guess quote
Dungeons and
unquote
Dragons, Settlers of Catan, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like I'm not super in it, but like there are these massive conferences, and he's all over them. And he's like one of just a few. Like now he's like a leader in this space. He's like basically the dominant player selling tables and games, and it's a pretty big business. So like another and he followed your path in that he went into an industry that he was personally very passionate about. Like he's into board games. My other two friends who are business partners, they run MoreAware, which is it's software as a service product that, how do I describe it? It's software for kitchen countertop installers. So if you're getting like granite countertop for your kitchen, the installer will come to your kitchen and they need to give you a quote that has this like custom diagram or drawing that shows what your kitchen countertop size is.
Oh, dang.
I mean, talk about like niche within a niche, but like,
yeah.
But it's, it's a multi-million-dollar business because they're like the dominant player, and it's so small. The niche is so small, but there are thousands of these installers across the country, Like, I mean, and they've been at it for more than 10 years at this point. So it's like, you never know, like this could be like an entry into like a whole, like deep rabbit hole of,
Yeah. The way that I've kind of thought about it, and, the concern that you brought up of it's who I'm targeting for my first 10 to 20 customers is a niche within a niche, It's a subgenre within, other genres of authors too. So it is very targeted. And there's that risk of like, if you're targeting these people, are there competitors? The answer, I guess, is no, in the sense that there's not any other web design website
like
solution specifically targeted to them.
They'll go figure it out themselves, like how to
right. Yeah, it's like the competitor in the vertical would be, other freelancers, other studios, like easy to purchase website themes. Those would kind of be like the vertical competition. But like what I wanted to validate before I like dove into this was that this horizontally they are willing to pay. There are, like newsletter tools. There are a lot of different tools built for indie authors for like marketing purposes, usually around like book bundles, that kind of stuff, that like it is a market that is proven to pay for tools that do solve problems for them.
Would they be using their website to sell their book?
So that's the answer to that is depends. I would say majority of them will not use their website to sell.
Okay.
Most people these days are building, especially in this genre too, are using Kindle Unlimited, which is like a subscription program, and you make money based on the number of pages read by people who download your book for free.
Oh, is that
their Kindle? Yeah, Kindle Unlimited subscription. That's how authors make money, by giving their books away for free. But
if that's the case, if they're, I didn't even know that Kindle Unlimited worked that way with how they pay the authors. But
I didn't either, but I learned a lot diving into this.
If that's the case, then you need to get your readers to choose your book within the Unlimited platform, right? So then you need to like market it.
Exactly. And for authors, indie authors especially, and especially the ones going Kindle Unlimited, what matters to them is like they need to engage readers. Like they're usually the plan is like the product plan is like make as many books as you can, get true fans, and get those. Maybe you have only 100 readers instead of 1 million readers, but because you have 20 books, those 100 true fans are like, I'm reading every single page of this book. It's so exciting. And like the more fans you can engage and bring into your quote unquote universe or the worlds that you're creating, the more money you will make. And to me, and a very important part of this is, how does your website play a role in this marketing funnel? You think about landing pages, you think about like updates on like writing your books. You can think about a lot of them use Patreon, but like even like membership, like some sort of like membership for like true, like even more like people who just get, it's like a lot of video games, like people in like, I guess like TV shows, you can think of it as like Comic-Con, like people get really into the stories and entertainment that they love. And this genre is no different. So like the goal of converting readers into true fans is where these authors can really make their money. Then you can sell merchandise. Then you can have membership communities where they get like special things, and they're even more guaranteed to read your books. But the key to that is to be able to update them, let them know that books have been launched. So that's like your newsletter. That's for going to your website for information.
Right.
And like the biggest complaints I've seen during this research is readers get frustrated when they can't get the information they need from authors. But what authors get frustrated doing is providing those updates because they feel like they just have to fuss with their website the entire time to get those updates out. So they just make a Facebook group to make it easy to do. But the Facebook group then frustrates some readers because they're like, I don't want Facebook. Like the website always has been and always will be that open platform where anyone, no matter what they want, can come to you for information on what you're trying to, I guess, sell or give. And
yeah, for sure.
I just saw this opportunity.
Just a minute to tell you about Productize. If you're sick of the client services treadmill, well, there's a better way, a productized service. That's why I built Productize. It's a private community and training program for people like you and me. We're operating a client services business, and we're scaling it up using the productized service model. Join our private Slack, our private forum, and get matched into your own small mastermind group with other members. Give and get honest, constructive feedback to grow your productized service business this year. Plus, get access to my Productize course, which gives you everything that you need to start, grow, and systematically build your productized service business. The best part about becoming a member? No ongoing subscription. Purchase once and you get lifetime access to everything. Go to productizecommunity.com for all the details. And right now you can get 10% off by using this special URL, productizecommunity.com/podcast. So like, I wanted to get a sense of like where you're at in the process of talking to your first prospects, doing research, customer development. Like, have you actually spoken to any, indie authors in this genre who you think have started to like talk to you seriously about this product? Like maybe they could become your first customers?
Yeah. So I've talked to two. One who has written a large number of books and has always wanted a website, but just hasn't ever had the time to devote to it, because just like indie authors and indie hackers, I've made this comparison already, but a lot of indie authors are doing this on top of a job already and doing it as a side hustle. So like their time is already needed to be used towards writing. And so he was very interested in this because he knew he needed a website. He just didn't have the time to do it. Not to mention he wanted it done well. So enter this product. He was interested. And then there was another author who was a little earlier on in their process who just didn't know how. He realized his website didn't look good and he had, higher standards for what he expected, but knew he couldn't do it. And so he was interested. And I think he would be a little bit more on like the lower end of like willingness to pay larger amounts, whereas the other person was on the higher end of that, which got me, thinking about how to package and price these kind of things. But yeah, I've got two people that have been interested so far, even without a product, but just with the idea of what the product would do.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, like, why don't we like kind of turn it over to you and whatever questions that you have or anything that you want to dig into, we can go from there.
All right. I would be happy to ask. So I have a few questions for you just to get your feedback on, and they're all very appropriate to the stage that I'm at. And just like, I've not gotten to the point of shipping, and it's these questions that always stump me and keep me from shipping. And I'm not going to let them this time, but I'd also like your feedback on them before I do. And the first one that I have for this is around like packaging and pricing. That's like, it's it's kind of scary in the sense that it's like, okay, as soon as I put a price out there in my mind, it's like, okay, they're either going to be like yes or no. And I may not ever get that sale again if my price was too high. And if my price was way too low, then, could have gotten more money, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I've shared some copy and like some packages a little bit with you.
Yeah. So we can talk about the copy and stuff a little bit later, but for now, yeah, let's just talk about the packages. And what I see in this doc that you shared You've got a DIY package for $250 per year, and then you've got a webmaster package for $500 a year, and then you call it a partner package for $1,000 a year.
Yeah. So I guess my first question is like, is this the kind of service that you would expect to be able to work on a subscription model? And I can give a little context on like why I think it can, and then I'd love your feedback on like if that is actually valid. So the DIY plan is $250 a year. It gives them access to the theme that I'm building, tools that would be included with it, documentation on how to set it up and to use what WordPress has, which is like the new block editor.
Oh yeah,
which makes it like super. It's. I mean, I'd love to do. I won't get into that. I'm using the block editor.
Yeah.
I want to build. I'd love to build a website builder down the road, but I'm using the tools that are available to get something shipped, which is the WordPress block editor.
Yep.
So it'd include all blocks, and then it would also include all updates, including like new designs, because this is a growing product. There are going to be new blocks available, the new designs, new like tools and stuff, hopefully along the way. So this would basically allow them to be responsible for setting it all up. So like they would not have the partnership aspect of it to where like they're getting help with how to set up. Obviously, I think I'd still help them because I want to build that relationship, but I'm not going to be devoting as much time to like, let's walk through your website step by step and get everything set up perfect. It's more of like a active support. Like if you have questions, I'm here kind of thing.
Yeah. So my understanding was that like because I think in some of the other copy that we can go over, like you have the DIY, the $250 a year. It's like they can sign themselves up. They get access to your themes and documentation, and if they have questions, they could ask. But then the other two packages, the higher packages, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're thinking like they would actually schedule a call with you, and together you would set up their website like in a day or something like that.
Exactly. Whether it's a day or weeks, a week, depending on like how long it takes to get assets ready, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's the idea of like, let's schedule a call together. Let's walk through your website, how to set it up best, some ways to think about it and how to use it to, like all these like more strategy type things. And the $500 a year with the webmaster is like, you still get access to all the themes and tools, but you'll get this video call. And then let's also like, I'll manage the setup and the maintenance. I'll take care of hosting. I'll take care of like SSL security, ongoing maintenance to your WordPress site so that you don't have to worry about security issues or getting plugins out of date, etc. That kind of thing.
I have some questions, maybe some issues with the way that these two first packages are structured. Like,
lay it on me.
Because from what I'm seeing, the main difference between the $250 per year and the $500 per year is the fact that you're doing that upfront setup, like done with you setup service.
Correct.
But I'm not seeing like a separated out charge for that. But instead, it's like, I know that we have like the ongoing hosting, security, ongoing maintenance and stuff included in the $500 a year. That apparently that's not included in the $250 a year.
Correct.
But it seems like you're adding more recurring revenue for mainly the value is the one-time service.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But actually, are you in the DIY, are you hosting it or do they have to go find their own web host?
Yeah, DIY would be like it's on them to get domain hosting, etc. They just get access to the themes and the designs.
I see. So DIY is like any other WordPress theme. Basically, they go get their own hosting and everything. The $500 a year and up is a hosted version of this.
Pretty much, yes.
Got it.
And I've thought about this a number of different ways. Like, do I add the whole like hosting as like an add-on to where it's like, if you don't want to have to deal with this stuff, that's a separate add-on that bumps up the total price of your package. But I decided with trying to keep it simple and including it as part of like the value, but I don't know, is that the right call? I don't know.
So it's been several years for me since I was really closely into the WordPress market. When I was in it with Restaurant Engine and the years before that, so that I started Restaurant Engine around 2012 and I was really in it in like 2013 to 2014. And I made the decision not to offer my themes. There was no DIY
gotcha
thing.
It was just like the whole package.
Yeah, you had to sign up as a subscribed hosting customer. And So I think I would probably offer the suggestion of just ditch that DIY option,
I wondered if you would say that.
because you're definitely going to have some customers who are like, well, I can just go to HostGator and for a lot
Right.
less
A
than
lot
500 a
less.
year.
Yeah.
But I mean, there would definitely be customers who just aren't aware of those competitors, or they just don't
Mhm.
want to deal with figuring out how to set
Mhm.
up a web host. But like I sort of prefer to just have like the value is that you've put the whole package together.
Right.
The website design is nice. That should be a given. You wouldn't be in this business if you can't create a nice website. But it's the packaging of it all. It's like
Mhm.
this is made for indie authors, especially
Mhm.
this genre who cares a lot about community around the book. So we have these community features, and so that stuff is all built in. And the other thing that I definitely saw with Restaurant Engine, by not offering a DIY service
Mhm.
or option, you really reduce churn.
Gotcha. Because they're like all in. They don't know of any other
Well,
way.
because if they wanted to cancel your service, they would have to go get a new website designed somewhere else.
Gotcha. Like, and not only just a new website design, but also
Also figure out the hosting and all the functionality and all that. Like, yeah, here, like they could just do your webmaster package for $500 a year, pay the $500, get the done with you setup service, and then downgrade to the lower package, and then just take their theme and go install it somewhere else, right?
that you bring up a valid argument. Yeah, I think, and yeah, I think the DIY plan was just more of like a fear of first business kind of thing, and
Yeah.
being scared to charge a higher price and wondering if people would pay.
That's the other thing I wanted to bring up. And like, WordPress technical things related to WordPress hosting and all that, put all that aside. No matter what business we're talking about, let's just talk about the price point. So, $250 a year, $500 a year, you would need a lot of customers before it's like, oh, this is coming close to replacing my full-time income.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of customers. And like, but that's not to say that that's not a valid approach, right? Like, you said, like, you're happy in your position and you're just trying to ship something, and something relatively small. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's nothing wrong, because you hear, especially in like the Patio 11, the software circles, it's like charge more, charge more,
Yep.
right? But I still think that there's value in lower priced points,
Mm-hmm.
lower priced products. It just be aware that, like, it's just going to take a lot longer stretch of time to grow it to a level that's like a viable business.
Right. I think I thought about that question as well, because I realized, doing the math, full-time payoff versus this one product, then I realized this is my first full-on effort at creating some sort of like business. I've done freelance work for a while, which could be considered a business, but this is meant to be repeatable, more recurring revenue. And it made me think of, Rob Walling's stair step to business approach kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like, maybe this isn't what gets me full-time revenue, but maybe this buys me not having to do freelance contracts anymore and being able
Yeah.
to devote time like all my time that I used to devote to freelance to helping these customers. Maybe there's ways to spread horizontally in the market kind of
And
thing.
just think about all the things you're going to learn from taking in revenue from something and figuring out, oh,
Exactly.
this sort of worked, and oh, if I were to do this again, I would do this a little bit differently, and then so get through this first time out.
And maybe who's to say prices can't get higher as it
course.
goes when I really nail down the real value that I could bring to this community. I don't know the answers to these things yet, but yeah, that definitely made me concerned to like charge higher to start out with.
Yeah. And I mean, just going to the actual structure of your product, I mean, you're talking about doing that done with you service. So I would kind of weight more of the revenue up front on that. Like,
Mhm.
even make that like $1,000 setup
Like a
fee.
separate thing, and then the recurring revenue kind of doesn't seem as daunting, but it's just more for like ongoing work.
Yeah, and probably the recurring would probably have to be lower.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe not, because you're also including maintenance, which I would assume includes like actual updates to their website.
Yeah, so that's kind of something that I've picked up along the way, which is like authors want to write, but what they don't want to write about is what they wrote about. So providing a framework and like kind of like, and writing your show notes for your podcast kind of got me thinking about this, which is, if I'm just building a relationship with them, what's to say I couldn't just have a conversation with them every week or every once a month or something and be like, hey, just checking in, how's your writing been going? And then write something up for them and add it to their website for updates for their audience. That idea has crossed my mind as part of this, to be able to offer authors, my goal is to create a package that is saving them as much time as possible so they can focus on writing, and whatever tools I can provide to get there and justify the value and the price that I'm going for. I think it comes down to just building that relationship and that trust.
Yeah. Well, what other questions do you have?
Yeah. So another question that I had, which is like, I'm currently actively engaging both like the readers and the authors in those communities and asking them like, how do you use your website? What are their pain points? Kind of like I mentioned earlier. What kind of things would you recommend for like validating a market or like the value of a product kind of in these like early days?
Yeah. So with validation, I don't think of validation as binary. Like, okay, today it's not validated. Tomorrow, yep, we've reached validation. Like,
yeah,
it's not that easy, right? It's much more like degrees, right? You get closer and closer. And also, I think of validation, like you have to validate multiple things. It's not just this whole product business is validated or not. It's the first thing is what we were talking about. Like, is there a market there? Like, yeah, there are authors, but are they willing to buy things like this? Do they pay money for this, or do they only like hire their brother-in-law and who can make them a website for free?
Right.
So it's like validating that first, and then it's like validating, can you actually reach these people? Like, are they reachable? Like, are there online communities, offline communities, places where you know how to reach them, or are they? Maybe there's a lot of them out there, but you would need to send postcards in order to reach them, and that's very expensive, right?
Right.
Like that's the next thing to validate, and then it's also like validating. Okay, so does this product actually solve their problem? Do they have objections, or do they choose your product over the alternatives? And that just takes iteration, and that to me is actually the easier part of it, is like making the product just right.
Gotcha.
Because it's like you could just literally, assuming you've validated the first two things, like you've found the customers, you've reached the customers, now
they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah, they're willing to pay for it. Now you just got to make sure that it's enough, that it does the things that they need to pay for it. Like,
right.
And that'll just take iteration. Like, oh, you don't need the automatic tweeting feature, but you do need an ability to sell it through your website. Okay, then we'll need to make those iterations. Yep. And then you find the next objection, and then eventually it's like, okay, enough people consistently find value in the set of features that we currently have, and that just takes iteration. Yeah, so and you're already doing the right things, which is talking to customers. So that's how I would go about validating it, I think.
Yeah, I think, and it kind of leads into my next question, which would be, you mentioned validating willingness to buy. At what point you've had experience, with Restaurant Engine creating something almost exactly like this for a different market? Would you wait till you have the whole package ready to deliver? Would you try to ship something smaller? Would you try to pre-sell? What would you recommend in terms of validating like willingness to pay, maybe before spending all the time? Or like, do you think that this is one of those things that you got to spend the time to have something to give to validate that?
Oh, you mean in terms of like building the product?
Well, that, and just like, at what point do you try to sell it? Wait till it's built, wait till, try to get something smaller shipped to validate it, or just sell the promise, like.
Well, the way that I did it back then, this was back in 2013, was I built an early access list. I think I ran some Google AdWords to restaurant owners, and I made like a 1-pager landing page for the website that had all these like kind of dummy graphics on it and these promises of what it's going to be, and enter your email address to be notified when we launch.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then I got 50 or 100 people on that list, and I reached out to all of them to try to get phone calls, and that resulted in like 15 or 20 calls.
And now, was this before you launched? You just tried to reach out to them to get more information about their business?
Before I even built anything. Like it didn't exist. It wasn't even
Right.
called Restaurant Engine yet. It was nothing. It was just an idea.
Yeah.
And then I spoke to people, and I believe what I did back then was I asked if they would be willing to pay for, like, I think I said it would cost like $49 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I got some like verbal yeses. And for that product, I didn't ask them to pay up front. Like I didn't do any like pre-selling.
Right.
But then what I did was I took like another 2 months to build like the first 2 themes and a bare bones version of the sign up process, and then like 2 or 3 more months to really refine the process. And then I invited like a bunch of beta users. See, I wasn't offering like the done with you service.
Right.
I hadn't sort of discovered that idea yet. I was still trying to make it like a SaaS at that time. So I spent like way too much time I hired a contractor to help me build this real fancy do-it-yourself sign-up process, all built on WordPress, and like it would automatically fire up a site on multi-site, and it had all these sorts of like do-it-yourself customization options built in. And then I had like a beta program for 2 months, and then I made it live, and the first like 5 or 6 customers upgraded. This was after 6 or 7 months of iterating. And looking back on it, I would have instead worked with the first customers directly and just set up a single instance WordPress installation,
Got it.
And like, if you really don't want to spend a lot of time, you could just pick an off-the-shelf WordPress theme before even designing your own.
Ooh,
I know you're a
that
designer,
hurts.
so you're probably not going to
I might not. I don't know if I can do even if it cost me money, I don't know if I could do that myself.
I'm the same way. But I'm just saying, like, just to validate it. Like,
yeah, no, for sure.
But even if you wanted to design it, like, just design one
Mm-hmm.
theme that's ready to go, but then do the session of setting it up with them, and you're gonna run into all these bumps during that session, like, oh, they want this, but I didn't build that in, so I'm gonna have to. So this will take an extra few days, and then you just get it right for the first
Mm-hmm.
couple of customers.
But if it's like I'm willing to build that relationship and not try to do the done for you type thing, then like having to custom code a couple extra things for their website is just the price of what you're paying for. Like that's hopefully like the type of service I want to be able to give within reason.
Yeah, but you would be custom coding features for their website, but you're
That
also
can be reused.
Yeah, you're coding them into your master theme that'll be used on all of your future customers, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you are selling this service though.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So it's not like you're doing it for free.
I was about to go down that rabbit hole of customization. Like, even though I do it with them, I was going to go down the rabbit hole of like, you can change all the colors, you can change the position of things, like all this kind of stuff. But like, kind of, I don't know, like what you said just like really, really made a lot of sense, which was like, if I can build that anyway, then why build it before I hear that they want to change those things when I can just make it as minimally customizable as possible and make it more customizable on demand, which in one way it's not shipping like a final product, but in the other way it's showing them that I'm like willing to listen and build the things that they really need.
Yeah, because they don't need it in a day.
Exactly.
Like, you can work with them and still schedule the day as if you're setting it up.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go into that day knowing like, okay, I know that I can give them a basic, nice looking website today.
Mm-hmm.
But any special requests that they have, you could just say like, all right, I'm going to note these down, and I'm going to circle back with you later in the week.
Yep.
When
Makes me think of the episode on Productize just a little bit ago that you did with Jared Gold of Website by Tonight. That kind of got me thinking a lot about like ways to approach this too, which is it's called Website by Tonight, but sometimes there's 2 calls just to make sure things are right, and it's not necessarily the fact that it's done in the day, but just the mental image of like, we're going to get this done quickly and within like a streamlined process.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. So
no, that
so
definitely answers that for me. And then there are 2 more. This next one kind of ties into some of this, and I think you kind of already answered it, but I'm thinking of doing, just going to be another one of those people doing Adam and Steve like hot tips, but like indie authors have not been seeing Steve Shoger's hot tips.
So you're talking about Adam Wathan and
Adam, Yes.
Adam Wythen and Steve Schroger, who are really well known in the web developer designer community, and
Exactly.
for years they've been mostly tweeting.
Mm-hmm.
Like Adam does like these web development tips, and Steve is a great designer, and he's been doing these design tips, and they've built up huge followings.
Yeah, and it's a really great tactic, but it's also just like a great way to like engage and like provide real value. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that could be done for authors that could give them little insights into how they can make their website better in the same way that they do it, where it's like, sure, they technically gave you everything in their refactoring UI product already through tweets mostly, but we're going to package it all up. We're going to make it easy for you to digest it all and be able to like see the value from that. And so I feel like that could help get authors more engaged with like what the possibilities are with things they could do with their website. And then the other part of this I thought was like doing kind of like what you did, which is like an early access list, but do it more of like a follow along as I build it list.
Mm-hmm.
Which now that you have like the last thing we talked about, which was like maybe even ship before you're ready, but like that means then I can customize less and can really focus on like the visuals and like the decisions that I'm making to engage them. And then like they've been updated along the way. So when I'm ready to launch, they're like, well, I know what this looks like and functions like, I'm in. Or they've already self-selected them to like be like, not my thing.
Well, a few things about that, like thinking about like Adam and Steve as a model, the guys who are in the web development industry, web design industry. The thing to always remember about them is that their audience is a massive audience of web developers who are massively active on Twitter, you know?
Yeah.
And so they eat up tips like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that like indie authors would be so interested in really following the story of building this thing.
Okay.
What indie authors would care about is like, how do I sell more books, or how do I write a better book?
Okay.
Or how do I come up with a better idea for a book? You know?
Right.
I know that you're a fan of that stuff, but you're not necessarily a writer.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And maybe I'm like letting some of my worldview and perspective, things that I like, seep into what I want to produce.
Yeah. That too. I mean, you know, it takes extra hours and time to do it, but you're not new to podcasting. I mean, I would think about maybe doing like a podcast where you're interviewing other authors, you know?
Ooh. Okay.
Because that's interesting content to other authors. They want to hear.
That's what they want to be hearing.
People just like themselves, you know? And then off of those interviews, you can pull out the insights. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this author had this really interesting tip for how he came up with the idea for his hit book.
Yeah.
You know, this or that. And then
gotcha.
That turns into a headliner tweet thing, you know?
Mm. Okay. And it's like you mentioned, like I've already done another podcast. It's not like I have to like get a microphone, get hosting, understand how to produce it, that kind of thing. So that would be a little easier.
And I'm not like in that genre, but I would guess that podcasting is.
Yeah, there's a number of podcasts.
Yeah.
On indie publishing.
So, very cool.
Well, cool.
Yeah, and you know, and then once you start to gain a little bit of traction with it, like you're doing like an interesting thing in this space, so you can go like what they call it, like a podcast tour, and like be a guest on those indie, you know, try to pitch yourself as
like
a guest.
Maybe try to talk about why I think this website service is needed and helpful, kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay. And then final question. I don't want to keep you all day. I was just listening to an episode that's going to be coming out soon it will probably have already come out by the time this one launches, but it's the one with Joel of Case Study Buddy.
Yeah.
He talks, you and him mention 99% of sales that come are not clicking the buy now button on your page, but they go through a sales call first.
Oh, yeah.
As you're kind of thinking through a landing page, how many times do you try to get people to jump on a call? Is it only... Do you do it like top and bottom? Do you do it more? Like, do you have any advice on like the right? And I know it's very specific, and you have some of my copy there, I guess, to try to look at and kind of see of an idea like when you might add those. But like, do you have any kind of like best practices or thoughts on like getting people into a call?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of like structuring the website, like there's really no right way, but there's just a couple of like best practices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you generally want to try to have one key call to action, like one big button. I don't mean specifically one button. You could have multiple buttons, but they should all be pointing towards the same action.
The same thing. Yeah.
And like on my Audience Ops website, I do make that button be request a consultation.
Right.
We talked about this on a few episodes of this podcast where I have made the choice to show pricing and to have the buy now button, like the purchase buttons on the website as well.
Right.
My website, I just happened to do like the one page layout. So like the pricing, those buy buttons, and the consultation and all the information about the service, it's all there on the homepage. You don't have to do it that way. That's just sort of how I ended up doing it. But really, even though I have the pricing and they do have the buttons to purchase, those are not I wouldn't even consider those like the call to action on the page.
Right.
You know, the big bright call to action is the big green area that says request a free demo and consultation. And the way that I have it set up on my site is that there's a big green button at the very top, like the top navigation, which is like an anchor, and it slides you down to the form. And it's a fixed navigation. So as you scroll down, you're still seeing the top navigation. You're still seeing that green button basically like at all times. That's one way to do it. It's actually a few years old, and it's probably not like the cool way of designing websites anymore, but
I mean, it doesn't always matter if it's cool design, if it's got the right content.
Yeah, but like Joel and I were talking about, I mean, yeah, even though we have the ability to come to the homepage and just purchase, almost nobody does that.
Right.
They need to talk to somebody first. Now, a lot of that depends on the price point, right? So Restaurant Engine, there definitely were people who came to the website and just purchased. But at the same time, we had a lot of sales calls because they're restaurant owners and they don't like to just buy things on the internet.
Right.
But at that price point, which is similar to your price point, like I think your prices here are low enough for someone to potentially be comfortable with
self-sign
buying
up.
it. Like especially the DIY, if you end up keeping that option, like, you know, WordPress themes in general, people buy them without talking to anybody.
Right.
But like the webmaster thing, like especially if the whole value is like doing a session with you in a day, like they're going to want to know who they're going to be working with. They're going to want to talk to you.
That makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, like in that case, I would make in almost all cases, really, I hate to say like all cases should do this one thing, but it's pretty rare that I would say like, don't make the CTA be talk to, like you want to talk to customers, especially early on. So make that primary call to action be like, request your consultation, you know, fill out your info and then have that lead to a booking on your calendar, you know?
That sounds good. I have listened to enough episodes that I thought that would be your advice, but I just wanted to ask it anyway.
And also, even the way that I set it up on Audience Ops, like on the pricing section, if you look at it, like it has like 3 tiers, and then the price point, and then what's included, and then a button to purchase. But right below that, it says "Let's talk."
Yeah, and it's just another way of
Let's talk is like another link that takes you right back to that consultation form, and the consultation form is sitting there right below those purchase buttons. So that does 2 things too. Number one, it makes it easy to get the consultation, but it's also like you saw the pricing. It was right next to the consultation form. So by the time we talk, you're already qualified past, like you've already mentally sort of accepted like, yeah, this is a decent price point. Now let me just get some questions answered.
Right. I think that answers everything that I have for now, because at some point you got to act on the advice, and I have a lot to definitely do. I think if you are open to doing this, maybe in a couple months we could do this again.
Yeah.
And I will have a product and at least one paying customer is the goal. And maybe we can kind of reflect on.
I like it. You're not allowed back on the podcast until you have a paying customer.
Well, okay. Let's not go crazy. Maybe it's not. Maybe I don't have a paying customer, but I've tried and I've got a product. Maybe it's a good episode of like celebration. Maybe it's an episode of bummer it didn't work. Where do I go next? Kind of advice. But I think maybe I would love the accountability of like, okay, let's do this in a couple months. I'm going to try to reach this milestone. And maybe reflect then.
I think that'll be really great for listeners. You know, we could follow along with the story, and I honestly think this will be a good learning experience for everyone. So
awesome.
Yeah, Will, thanks for doing this, and thanks for doing such an awesome job. Producing the podcast. I'm excited to keep it going.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more episodes, and hopefully having good things to share next time I'm on. But you never know, and I won't get down just because it isn't. But looking forward to putting all your advice into action and kind of seeing where this goes.
Sweet. All right. Did that give you something to think about? If it did, let me know on Twitter. I'm @CastJam. If you want to find show notes on this or any of the other episodes, or my weekly newsletter with new content, head over to productizeandscale.com. Now, if you haven't already, a 5-star review in iTunes, that would go a long way to helping other folks find the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.